There is something most men have never heard, yet a woman's body recognizes it within seconds. There are movements that surpass any technique, any advice, and any previous experience. Movements that aren't explicit, obvious, or loud, but that disrupt her breathing, shift her internal balance, and release a sensitivity she doesn't understand herself. The most striking thing is that these movements don't depend on strength, size, or practice. They depend on knowing exactly where and how to touch what her nervous system interprets as desire, vulnerability, and anticipatory pleasure. Most men never touch those places because they think female pleasure begins in the obvious spots. But a woman's body doesn't work that way. Pleasure begins in what she doesn't expect. In that first touch that isn't sexual, but awakens her. In that movement that doesn't speed up, but unlocks her. In that tiny gesture that activates nerve fibers connected to emotional surrender. Sometimes a single stroke in the right place is enough to subtly change her breathing and bring her mind into that state where she stops analyzing and starts feeling. The first key that triggers this state is anticipatory touch, a touch so gentle it seems innocent, yet it acts directly on her parasympathetic nervous system. When that touch is done correctly, slow, warm, secure, her body shuts off defenses and turns on sensitivity. It's the moment when her skin stops protecting her and starts responding. Once you're there, once you've opened that door, the trigger appears that separates good men from unforgettable ones. Variable rhythm. Women do not react the same way to repetitive stimulation. What truly drives them wild is the unexpected change, the half-second pause that lasts longer than she expected, the touch that softens exactly when she anticipated intensity. This subtle unpredictability releases dopamine. I'm not talking about random improvisation, I'm talking about intentional modulation. Variable rhythm isn't a trick. It's the fine reading of how her body begins to heighten sensitivity. But the most underrated trigger, and the one that truly disarms her, is conscious pressure. That moment when your hand, your torso, or your arm creates firm, steady, deep, but never harsh contact. This pressure activates muscle receptors directly linked to emotional surrender. She may look calm on the outside, but if you do it correctly, her deeper muscles will react involuntarily. A slight shift of the hips, a longer breath, a faint tremor. This pressure has the power to pull her out of her head and directly into her body. It is the first sign that she is starting to lose control. And she won't say it. She'll feel it. When a man masters these first three keys, a woman's body changes. Not because she consciously decides to surrender, but because her physiology demands it. And the most fascinating part is that this still isn't what truly drives her crazy. Because the strongest, deepest, most powerful reactions are reserved for the next movements. Movements very few men know, yet a woman's body recognizes instantly. Movements that explain why some women say, "With him, I felt something different," even if they can't fully explain what it was. And now that her body is receptive, now that her breathing has changed, now that her mind has crossed that threshold where everything feels more alive, the reactions begin that a man must know how to read if he wants to take her to an emotional and physical experience she will never forget. When a woman reaches this point, she's no longer performing. Her body is perceiving every microscopic variation. The temperature of your hand, the direction of your movement, the intensity of the air between you, even your breathing when it naturally synchronizes with hers without you noticing. Her sensory receptors are fully awake, and her limbic system, the part of the brain that links emotion and pleasure, is already receiving signals that bypass conscious thought. In this state, everything feels different. The same touch that felt neutral a few minutes ago now feels electric. The same caress she barely noticed at first now triggers an immediate response. And this is where the most powerful triggers begin to work. The first thing that happens is the activation of the sensory edge, a zone that marks the transition between skin that protects and skin that feels. This edge isn't a single point. It's a thin band where nerve density changes, where temperature is perceived with twice the intensity, and where the skin almost interprets the intention behind the touch. Touching this edge doesn't require strength. It requires precision. A gentle pressure moving from the outside inward, as if drawing a line she has never seen, but her body instantly recognizes. It's a type of contact her brain reads as, "This isn't accidental," and in that moment her mind begins to anticipate. Anticipation is the true amplifier of female desire. When the sensory edge is correctly stimulated, something extremely interesting happens. The deep muscles, especially those stabilizing the hips and abdomen, activate involuntarily. It is a micro movement, almost invisible, a reflex revealing she is beginning to lose conscious control over her physical response. That small movement is the sign that you are touching the layer of desire expressed not through words, but through reflexes. And now, we enter what truly separates an ordinary man from an unforgettable one: the point no one touches. This point isn't intimate, explicit, or located in an area men typically explore. It's a point where three things converge: sensitivity, nerves linked to emotional surrender, and a slight physical vulnerability. It sits in a region most men overlook because it doesn't look sexual. And that is exactly why it is so powerful. Her body isn't prepared to be touched there. And when you do, her nervous system reacts without filters. Most men touch this point accidentally. A moment, a random brush, an unexpected movement, and suddenly she breathes differently or pauses for a second. That's what you must understand. This point doesn't produce direct pleasure. It produces surrender. Mental surrender, physical surrender, emotional surrender. When you touch that point with the exact right pressure, neither shallow nor deep, it activates a neural branch linked to the sensation of letting go. It is a place that rarely receives attention, so the neurosensory surprise is enormous. It's as if her brain says, "This, I truly didn't see coming." And that's when she loses the ability to hide what she's feeling. The most common reaction is a longer, quieter inhale. The second is a shift in posture. She leans toward you instinctively, not consciously. The third, the most intense, is a slight vibration in the deep muscles of her lower abdomen or inner thigh. And you don't need to say a word. Her body is already speaking to yours. But the point no one touches doesn't work alone. It requires something almost no man knows how to do: active containment. Active containment is the art of holding without squeezing, guiding without pushing, being present without invading. It is a posture through which your body sends her a clear message: "I've got you. You can let go." Neurophysiology confirms this. When a woman feels secure physical containment, her brain reduces activity in the regions linked to vigilance, even when she's fully awake, and increases activity in regions linked to pleasure. It is the emotional equivalent of turning off an alarm. In that moment, her skin receptors become more receptive, her breathing slows down, and muscle tension decreases. Many men mistake this transition for shyness or nervousness, when in reality, it is the beginning of total surrender. And now we reach the final trigger, the most sophisticated, the most intense, the one that turns a physical experience into one that imprints on her emotional memory: sensory guidance. Sensory guidance is the synchronization of your movement with hers, not by copying her, but by anticipating her. It's when your rhythm arrives half a second before hers, creating the sensation that her body follows yours without you physically moving her. It's a silent communication in which your intention becomes a pulse, and she feels it before she processes it. The female brain interprets this synchrony as connection, safety, and deep intimacy. Age doesn't matter. Experience doesn't matter. Relationship type doesn't matter. When a woman enters this state, her body learns something new. It learns what it feels like to be accompanied, read, and understood at a physical level. And that learning leaves a trace. Science calls this sensorimotor coupling. Women call it feeling something different. Men who master it never forget it. The important thing to understand is that none of this is fantasy. These are physiological responses, nervous system reflexes, patterns measurable in effective neuroscience. And when a man understands this language, the sensory edge, the point no one touches, active containment and sensory guidance, he doesn't need strength, youth, or experience. He needs awareness. He needs intention. And he must understand one essential truth. A woman's body doesn't react to force. It reacts to emotional precision. If you made it this far, tell me with a number from 1 to 10. How much did you learn today about the female body that no one had ever told you?